Hello and welcome to our event. It's a pleasure for you all to join us for the event of what we are what we teach. And we're going to be joined by some incredible speakers. I'm going to be handing over to some incredible speakers in a second. But just before I do that, I want to introduce myself. I'm Zamzam Ibrahim, currently the Vice President of the European Students' Union. And I'm very excited to be hosting this really exciting event where we're going to have a lot of incredible speakers. The event will present 5 cutting-edge ideas of how universities and student leaders and Olympic sports and the Scout movements and video gaming industry are all protecting and defending our environment. And after that, we're going to be joined by some ministers, government representatives from Egypt, Indonesia, Malawi, the UK, Kenya, to reflect on how they're working and on what we teach and what we learn. And finally, we'll be joined by Adam McKay, the director of Don't Look Up, who will share his thoughts on how the youth can take action for the future. So we have a very excited, jam-packed hour with us. So I want to hand over, but first, and introduce Sonja Layton-Cohn, an acting Deputy Executive Director of the UN Environment Programme, to share.
Hi, Zamzam. I hope that you can hear me, and thank you so much for a wonderful introduction, and good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, colleagues, and friends. When I was a young girl growing up in Jamaica, I think nature was everywhere and everything to me. In fact, almost like air we breathed, whether it was climbing the mango trees or chasing after butterflies and bees and wasps, or going to the beach or going into the mountains. It was something that was truly a part of my life and my family's life and some of our best memories. And these experiences definitely have shaped my abiding love for our planet, leaving me with a profound desire to protect the health of the living world. But this isn't just my experience. Research shows that children who are exposed to things like hiking, camping, or sowing seeds are far more likely to safeguard the natural world. These values last a lifetime, inspiring actions that reduce planetary pressures in a way that improve the well-being of us as humans. So when we put the living world at the heart of a person's education, we're quite literally transforming our collective future. Young people are yearning for this transformation. 90% of them are concerned about the impacts of climate change. And 92% of students say sustainable development should be promoted on campus. They understand there's a problem and they know exactly what kind of knowledge they need to address it. But young people aren't just agents for change in our schools or communities. They're also the decision makers of tomorrow. Their engagement on the planetary crisis is essential if we're going to chart a new course. And that's why UNEP is working with the world's biggest youth movements and education partners. It's why we'd like to work with ministers from across the education system and the environment to change how and what we teach. And it's why we're working with the video gaming industry, the Scouts and Girl Guides, and the biggest sports in the world to make sure we're having an impact outside of the classroom too. There are many dynamic discussions coming up today across these different educational interfaces. But for now, I'd like to leave you with 4 key points. First, we must pollinate the curriculum with knowledge about nature and the environment. Second, environmental education must be fully integrated into international and national policies on education and sustainable development. Third, We must harness the power and reach of the non-formal education tech sector. Teaching isn't enough. We must shift mindsets. Fourth, we must listen to young people and give them a seat at the table, a real seat. We need to start working for young people, with young people, to bring about a sustainable world for future generations. So making peace with nature is the defining task of the 21st century, and we need young people at the heart of it. Our door is open to work with all of you, and in my role as the Acting Deputy Executive Director of UNEP, I will be a champion for your work. Thank you so much, and back over to you.
Thank you so much, Sandra, for those incredibly powerful words, which really lift my spirit in the work that we do. So next, I'm going to hand over to some incredible people who are doing incredible work from very different perspectives, and I'm very excited to share some of the work that they're going to share with you. So we have 5 for 5 presentations of innovative ways and to help you realize how climate and nature can change, how we can influence change in a completely different way in the future. So we have Karis and Shreya, who what do students want from their education, youth, they're from the Teach the Future and the Mock COP campaign, and they'll be telling us about how education in nature in order to prepare them for the sustainable future that they need. We'll also have how can universities play their part, joined by Nature Positive Universities Alliance, led by the University of Oxford, calling for universities to reduce their biodiversity impact of their supply chains and land use by joining the movement. Okay. And we'll also be joined on a different angle by a sports angle. African universities, I think somebody needs to go on mute.
Yeah, they're different delegations.
And then we'll also be joined by the Scouts. How can some of the biggest youth movements in the world take action? And then also be joined by how we can make, also be joined by the Planet Alliance member on Ubisoft around gaming specifically, which is really exciting in a different angle. And I'm going to introduce them as they come up, but next I'm going to introduce the what young people want from their education, Karis and Shreya from the Teach the Future campaign and the climate justice activist Mock COP.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Karis McIntyre and I'm a 17-year-old student and climate activist from Salisbury, England. In late 2019, I helped to launch the campaign Teach the Future. Teach the Future is a student-led campaign in the UK looking to get climate education interweaved throughout the entire school curriculum. Adequate climate education means to educate students of all ages on climate science, on the general consequences of rising temperatures, and on the impact of the climate crisis on their specific area of study. At primary or secondary levels of schooling, this may mean teaching about the specific science within science lessons, teaching about the impact on food supply in food tech or home ec, or teaching about the human impacts within geography. At a higher education level, this may mean teaching about the impact on industry, teaching about the impact on medicine and on viruses that may spread when mass migration occurs, or teaching about the effects on international relations. We also recognise this must span into educational buildings and infrastructure. To ensure future sustainability and better climate education, we must make educative buildings carbon neutral as soon as possible. Combined with more spaces for students to connect with nature and the world around them, this can support and further climate education. From Teach the Future's research, we've learned that only 4% of students feel they know a lot about the climate crisis, and 68% more want to know more. We know there is a gap here, and we must rectify this and prepare students for their future. Because whether you're a pharmacist or a farmer, a banker or a builder, you will be affected by the climate crisis. Students deserve to learn about the climate and ecological emergency, regardless of the subjects they choose. Sustainability should be treated as a key principle in education, woven throughout all subject areas. To do this, we call for reviews of the curriculum to include climate education. We call for teachers and lecturers to be provided with the training and support to teach these subjects. And we also call for all educational buildings to be net zero. Thank you, and now I'll be passing on to Shreya from MOOC.
Thank you, Karis. Hi, everyone. I'm Shreya. I'm delighted to be here representing MOOC 26. We all are familiar that the world today is crippled with climate crisis, biodiversity loss, loss of natural resources at a scale never seen before, which has directly and indirectly caused many of the socioeconomic as well as mental health related problems. The IPCC report launched just 2 days ago has reminded us that it is very clear. Many of these are originated because of the belief that human beings are superior over everything in the nature and economic growth matters even more than the well-being of nature. I believe that our education system must make us unlearn such incorrect beliefs and make us realize that we are just a part of nature. Nature-based education in all levels, especially tertiary education, gives an golden opportunity for students to learn and to engage in tackling complex environmental problems, as well as to acquire technical skills, as well as to be creative problem solvers. Myself, I'm a student of environment science, and I have learned extensively about nature in my study. Without any doubt, I can say that that the nature component in my study has enhanced my practical skills, developed empathy, personal development, as well as instilled environmental stewardship inside me. But such education should not be a choice for just few subjects. It should be rather available to everyone. That is why one of the main demands of MOOC Treaty, which was prepared by young people across the world, asks governments to ensure that all the students get the opportunity to learn about their connection with nature, and also including the knowledge and practices of indigenous people. Building upon this, in 2021, we did a global campaign called Teach the Teacher, in which we talked with educators about climate crisis and the importance of including nature component in it. In COP26, together with different partners, we organized Education and Environment Minister Summit, where more than 20 countries has pledged to create resources and opportunities for climate and environmental education. I hope our work inspires governments, and we call upon all the governments to ensure that climate and nature is embedded in all levels of education, thereby working with young people as equal so as to create inclusive consultative process. I also want to take this opportunity to have your attention to invest in teacher and schools so that they are able to deliver quality education. Lastly, I want to call all the institutions to be responsible for the individual emissions and lead in designing and also in delivering the relevant teaching contents to the young people, because at the end of the day, we are what we learn. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karis and Shreya, for sharing those very inspirational words. Next, we'll be looking at how universities can play their part. Please welcome Emily Stott, Nature Positive Universities Coordinator, to introduce the initiative.
Hello, it's great to be here at UNEA. My name is Emily Stott, speaking from University of Oxford. I'm excited to introduce the Nature Positive Universities Alliance. This is a growing network of 300 universities from all around the world, united to set ambitious targets for nature recovery on campuses and across their supply chains. Universities have unmatched power and influence over our next generation of students, leaders, and scientists. Here's a short film to show you more. A nature positive university is a university that leaves nature in a better state, and this includes everything that a university does, from the teaching and research on campus to the supply chains that keep it running.
The time to act is now. Climate change is advancing rapidly, and nature conservation is essential to confront these effects. Universities are the primary source of knowledge for society, being the most respected entities regarding culture, science, and learning. Students must learn about how to apply nature-based solutions to increase well-being.
The United Nations General Assembly has declared the years 2021 to 2030 as the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration.
Action can be taken at all parts of the university ecosystem. That includes students and staff and academics.
We are so proud to be one of nature's positive universities in the world. To encourage students here on the need of a greener environment for learning, we hope to connect and work with other nature positive universities around us.
Blühender Campus, or Campus in Bloom, was founded by staff and students with the aim to radically transform our relationship with nature. This is most visible on these previously sterile species poor lawns that have now been transformed into flowering biodiverse meadows, challenging our views on what green spaces should look like in urban landscapes.
By stepping back and taking a look at the impact of all the university's operations, you might find that food has a really high biodiversity and carbon impact. It's been really great to work with catering staff and chefs to better understand how they operate, thinking about how they can make their food sustainable.
I'm a final year student of Forestry and Wildlife Management at the University of Haripur, Pakistan. They have conducted various events on climate restoration and offering admission in various environment-related programs.
So we currently have 300 universities signed up, but there are 20,000 universities in the world.
The possibility of interactions with exchange of students' experiences and knowledge will speed up the action against climate change. Thus, it is crucial and urgent that all universities join to the network as quickly as possible.
The network provides a great opportunity for developing an impact assessment framework together about how to measure the university's impact on nature.
As a community of institutions, we have a huge power and we can make a great difference to sustainability.
Humans and nature can thrive together.
So we welcome universities to join Generation Restoration
and secure a future in harmony with nature.
Thank you so much, Emily, and the Nature Positive Alliance, University Alliances. Now we're going to move on to the next session. We'll be looking at how sports can deliver for nature. Please welcome Julie Dufus and Olympic Movement Sustainability Senior Manager, International Olympic Committee, and Melissa Wilson, environmentalist, rower, and a co-founder of Athletes of the World. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Zamzam, and great to be with you today. I just want to put in your head that there is no doubt that sports needs nature. I think, as Sonia mentioned at the beginning, being outside should play an essential part of everybody's growing up. Imagine a world where we could no longer go for a swim in clean water, or go for a bike ride through a forest, or climb a mountain and breathe fresh air. Well, this is a reality for so many people around the world, and more people are experiencing this. Not only are our waterways becoming too polluted to practice sport in, but so is our air and our land. There are the obvious impacts like the disappearing snow, the flooded pitches, the cancelled events, but there are also the more silent impacts like air pollution on our athletes' health and also extreme heat, and we're seeing this more and more frequently around the world. But on the other hand, many countries are reporting increasing levels of inactivity, and this is actually a very significant contributor to global mortality rates. And I think, as underlined by the COVID-19 pandemic, global health is everyone's concern, and sport has a real key role in reforming health systems at a country level. So we've got to find a way to make more people active, but at the same time, we have to protect and enhance our nature and allow biodiversity to thrive so that we can enjoy the outdoors, so that we can practice sport in those environments. So we need sport to not only take more action in protecting nature, we also need sport to create more nature positive legacies. And we need to use the unique power that sport has to educate and inspire people around the world to take more action. And I think us in sports have a real opportunity to do this. So for all of those reasons, we have built a strong relationship with UNEP, and together we are building a systematic approach to shift the way that sport considers its impacts on nature, but also to see how we can bring sport together to educate. And one of the ways that we do this, of course, is through our athletes. So on that note, I'd like to introduce you to Melissa Wilson, a British rower, but she's also an athlete who not only needs nature, but is also working to protect it. Melissa is a real advocate for nature and the planet and has founded an organisation called Athletes of the World. So over to you, Melissa.
Thank you, Julie, and it's a great pleasure to be here today. What Julie's saying has definitely been my own experience. I was a GB athlete for 5 or 6 years, and when the Olympics were postponed, I started trying to find ways to advocate for the planet through sport. I was a rower, and my teammate Hannah Mills is a 3-time Olympic sailor, and I think we both found that being out in the elements of nature really impacted our concern about what was happening to the natural world. Last year, based on that concern, we founded an organisation called Athletes of the World, which is looking to empower more athletes to advocate for the planet. We see a huge potential for sport, partly because of its enormous reach. 3.6 billion people watched the Rio Olympics, 3.5 billion people follow football, 2.5 billion people follow cricket, and sports like golf, tennis, and hockey have similar numbers of fans. But even more importantly, so many of the qualities that sport embodies, like being collaborative, ambitious, courageous, and driven, are so important in how we approach the climate and nature crisis. For me, sport is the arena where people around the world are brought together to push boundaries and see athletes who've worked day in, day out for a long-term goal like winning an Olympic medal. It's that sort of approach that we want to activate around the world for climate and nature. It was that realisation about the power of sport that inspired me in 2020 to write to the UK government calling for a green recovery to the COVID pandemic. We had over 320 GB Olympians and Paralympians sign that letter, including athletes like Sir Mo Farah, Sir Steve Redgrave, and 40 Olympic and Paralympic champions. Then, ahead of COP26 last autumn, Hannah and I worked with Julie and the International Olympic Committee to create a video with athletes from around the world, calling on world leaders to be ambitious and brave during the climate summit. The video included athletes like Eliud Kipchoge, Andy Murray, and Olympic flag bearers from 35 different countries. I've been worried about what we're doing to climate and nature for a long time, and it can be really easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problem and how much we risk losing if we don't manage to find solutions to where we are now. However, realising that sport could be part of the solution has given me a massive source of hope and really energised me to try to do what I can. Through Athletes of the World, Hannah and I hope that other athletes will join us in advocating for the planet and nature, and we're really grateful to the national and international sports bodies and federations that join us in taking action. We also call upon the world's athletes, sports federations, and governments to take greater action in protecting nature. It's our most powerful asset and the solution to so many of the challenges we face. I'll now hand back to Julie for some closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. And if any of you haven't seen what Melissa's been doing, please go and find it on the internet, because the video she also did for COP was really inspiring to everyone. So thank you. This is an area where actually I'm excited to announce that together with UNEP and IUCN, we're working to create a new partnership actually to create a framework for sport and nature that supports sport organisations to not only reduce their own impacts, but also to leave a positive impact and use that power that sport has to educate on nature. And so in the lead up to this, the IOC and UNEP have been working with the University of Loughborough and also Grid Arundel on a new report, really looking at the baseline of sport as of today and exploring the contribution that sport can make in addressing the nature crisis that we're facing today. So I urge all of you to keep an eye out for this report. Following that, we're also going to be launching this year this new framework. So all of you, if you're a sport organisation, can sign up to that, but all of you can play a role in that. You can get your local clubs involved to do the same, and really urge everyone that you know who practices sport to take more note of nature and the environment they're in, and really use sport as a means to educate around the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie and Melissa. Melissa's story was incredibly inspiring to me, and I'm sure to many others as we listened. And I think that call to action was very, very clear. So next, I want to introduce two youth representatives from the World Organization of Scout Movement, which is one of the biggest youth movements to exist in the world. So really excited to hear about what they're going to be doing.
All right, thanks so much, Zamzam. Well, Scouting is actually the largest youth movement in the world, with more than 57 million members in our ranks, contributing towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Our system of non-formal education has allowed us to empower young people to become agents of positive change, to be leaders in their communities, and to advocate for the causes that they believe in most, transforming our strong membership members into 2 billion hours of concrete service towards the sustainability and the environment. Our main non-formal education initiative is the Earth Tribe. This initiative works from the ground up to promote local and personal development of sustainable habits towards an eco-friendly and healthy lifestyle through outdoor experiences. The Earth Tribes has 4 main learning paths: responsible consumption, nature and biodiversity, clean energy, and pollution management, all of which are connected to different SDGs. This is implemented through 3 main programs. The first program is Plastic Tide Turners, which is done in partnership with the UNEP-'s Clean Seas program. This program aims to educate young people about plastic pollution. Scouts have to complete a series of levels and activities that educate them about the responsible use of plastics and guide them towards reevaluating their own plastic consumption. Scouts Go Solar is done with Greenpeace and Solar Africa and is aimed towards teaching Scouts about the applicability and benefits of implementing solar power in their communities and the use of renewable energy. The final program is Champions for Nature, which is developed in partnership with the World Wildlife Fund. The challenge encourages young people to take concrete actions for our planet. It also empowers young people to become active global citizens. Through these programs, Scouts gain the skills and knowledge necessary to embark on larger scale projects towards sustainability, which Shreya will talk about.
Now we would like to share some examples on what Scouts are doing through experiential learning around the world based on these non-formal environmental programs that Keck shared. And for example, the Croatian Scouts created the largest European volunteer project to replant trees that were destroyed by wildfires. The project is called Painted Back Boranka, and through a hybrid campaign during the pandemic, which it was online and in person, more than 65,000 new trees were planting, helping the forest ecosystem to be restored with diversity. We also have our friend from Kenya, Mary Jane. She raised awareness about the importance of traditional knowledge in various farming processes, showing to the community where she lives that the brown olive is a species that protects other crops, and if they grow several crops together instead of one crop or monocrops, they can protect the ecosystem. The level of production is way higher and they don't harm the environment. We also have another project from our friends in Singapore. It's called Project Orion, where together with WWF, every year they go to the Terengganu beach in Singapore, and they help with the turtle conservation work, such as beach patrolling, data collection of the nets at the hatchery, helping out with the maintenance and upgrading of the village. We also have a project in Mexico to conserve the axolotl, which is an endangered species, and Scouts over there did kind of help to recover the habitat where this species needs to live, and they were supporting the conservation process along with other official representatives. Now that we have shared some successful examples with you, we would like to make some echo in some of the points that Ms. Sonja mentioned at the beginning, and to call to governments and other relevant stakeholders to: 1, increase your involvement in the environmental policy decision-making processes, recognizing young people as right holders to this agenda. 2, recognize non-formal education as an effective approach to an environmental and sustainable education, which helps young people to understand their own personal impact in the environment, their role in the ecosystem they live in, and to learn how to take action in their community. And last but not least, build in financial support for non-formal environmental programs supporting environmental and sustainable education. Thank you so much.
Thank you so so much to Grisha and Kik for sharing with us some of the incredible things that's happening all around the world by the Scouts movement itself. And next, I'm going to hand over to our next exciting speakers. Last but not least, so Siri Michaela, Associate Expert at UNEP, and Oliver Dwaba, VP of Games to Life at Ubisoft, to discuss how we can make use of popular mediums such as video games to make a difference around education, nature, agenda. Over to you, Siri.
Thank you, Zamzam, and hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Siri Makala and I work for the UN Environment Programme, and I have been coordinating the Playing for the Planet Alliance since its launch 2.5 years ago. And during that time, the Alliance has grown from 19 companies to 32 video game companies and 7 associate members. The Playing for the Planet Alliance is a collective effort by the gaming industry to reduce its carbon footprint and integrate environmental activations into games. What has been especially great to see is game companies that normally compete coming together to collaborate on the environmental agenda. Last year alone, the companies who are part of the Playing for the Planet Alliance took more than 50 environmental actions. Close to $800,000 in donation were made to charities through the Green Game Jam, and 1.2 million trees were planted. In addition, 60% of the Alliance members have committed to become net zero or carbon negative by 2030. The video game industry has the power to engage and inspire billions of people across the world. And this makes them hugely important partner in addressing the triple planetary crisis we're facing. So now I will give the floor to Oliver Daba, who is the VP, Games to Life, Positive Play team at Ubisoft. And he will tell us more about the educational power of video games and how we can use them to make a difference.
Good evening. I'm Olivier Debat. I'm a VP with Ubisoft in the Positive Play department. I cannot be with you today, but I wanted to express that we here at Ubisoft, we believe game can be a very powerful force for change and a force for good. As an industry, we reach more than 2 billion players, meaning a very diverse population of players. Games are played everywhere by people of different backgrounds. Games have no border. They are really nowadays a universal language. They are played anywhere. We are as well, and perhaps more importantly, the favorite entertainment media for the younger generations, the ones that will have to live through climate change. This gives us a responsibility. How can we educate about these issues? Can we propose solutions? Can we let players build and test their own hypotheses and solutions and influence the course of the world, of the virtual world, and then the course of the real world, maybe? We believe we need to, and we can tackle and address serious topics in our games, such as these environmental issues. We can not only expose these topics and the potential solutions to players through narrative and storytelling, obviously, but because games are an active media, we give an opportunities to players to act on the challenges we throw at them. When playing, you take decisions, you then take actions, and you get feedback on your actions. That's the strength of our media. Let's use that strength to fight climate change. As an industry, we are making progress on this front and trying to address it as much as we can. Thanks notably to the super work of the Playing for the Planet Alliance, which brings together more than 30 game companies from all over the world to share best practices and influence the design of their own games. Through initiatives like the Green Game Jam, more than 30 studios last year have brought to life their vision of games centered around environmental topics. And these games have been played by more than 130 million players. These numbers keep growing from one year to another. We are having an influence on players. Last year, our Nano 1,800 games let the player understand the issue of natural resource management through gameplay. And we thank you for the award it earned. For the first time in a real-time strategy game in Nano, you had to manage resources that were non-renewable, just like in the real world. And you had to plan your progress as a civilization accordingly, balancing needs and sobriety, just like we need to do right now in the real world, if we want to sustain ourselves. So yes, for you players, there are many things you can learn from games when it comes to environment and sustainability issues. We hope it will inspire you to take action in the real world as well, because there is so much more you can do outside of games. And we hope it will inspire you to push for change in the real world. I would like to conclude by inviting other game developers, fellow game developers, other studios, other publishers to join the Playing for the Planet Alliance. It's an important topic and each one of us has a role to play in it. The more of us, the stronger our impact will be. Thank you, and let's take action.
Thank you so much, Olivier, and to Siri, and to all of our 5 for 5 speakers. I think, if anything, I've learned a lot of different things, and it is very exciting and important to see and understand the solution to the climate crisis is a cohesive, collective vision that needs to be built. And that really means bringing everyone on that journey, regardless of their skills, you know, and understanding that there's different ways in tackling the climate crisis. There's innovative ways of attacking the climate crisis, and I think it's been really exciting to see that today. Whether we're speaking about the work that the Scouts are doing, just hearing from Olivia on how gaming, but I'm also really excited now and humbled to be joined by some ministers from all around the world to really talk about what is being done, and these high-level government ministers are really going to talk about how we can accelerate the work that is happening. So first, I'm going to introduce you to the speakers. We've got Dr. Yasmin Faoud, the Minister of Environment in Egypt. We've got Baroness Baron, Parliamentary Undersecretary of State, Minister of School Systems. We've got Mr. Mamo Baro Mamo, Director General, the National Environment Management Authority in Kenya. Her Excellency Ms. Agnes Nyalonji, Minister of Education in Malawi, and Mr. Adindoto Ditomo, Head of Agency for Standard, Curriculum and Education Assessment, Deputy Minister of Minister level, and Minister of Education and Culture in Indonesia. Absolute pleasure to have you all with me. But first, before we go on to the live discussion, we'll hear from Minister Faoud. And the question that we posed to Minister Faoud was, seeing that integrating environment-related issues into the educational curricula will be among the topics to be tackled during the COP27 in Egypt, could you share a bit more with us around your plans for reforming education to ensure that we secure a sustainable future that we need? Dr. Faoud.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to participate in this session today. Looking at the environment, climate, and how that could be integrated in the educational curriculum, a lot has been done, and yet we have to accelerate action towards linking climate and education. In Egypt, 3 years ago, while reforming the educational curriculum for school children, starting from 6 years old to 12, we integrated climate and biodiversity, integrated the definitions with interactive activities that would enable the youngster to understand the climate, its relation to their life, and what are the best practices that could be done. This is crucial and important in order to prepare future generation for combating climate change with actual actions on the ground. Also, it's very important to know that there are some milestones for any country that needs to take it over in order to bring nature closer to its people. First of all, how can we preserve more the traditional knowledge of the local community? How can you bring local community within the conservation and the ecosystem restoration methods? For example, integrating local community, especially women and most vulnerable group, for the conservation inside protected area and providing job opportunities for them. So they will be doing both, conserving the natural resources, looking further into their traditional knowledge and finding new opportunities for jobs. Thirdly, it's very also important when we look at the environment sector and how can we achieve that conservation of biodiversity, compliance with the environmental standards, as well as keeping our oceans clean and linking that to the recycling of the waste. You will find that a multi-stakeholder approach would be very much needed. At the national level, the government and line ministers should align themselves with conserving the environment and protecting the oceans. The private sector should have a part in that process by providing more opportunities for the private sector to keep our oceans clean. Thirdly, the recyclers. How can we integrate public-private partnership between the private sector and the government while having the informal sector an integral part of that? Egypt has gone through a lot throughout the past 3 years in bringing a very new waste management regulatory law into place, getting a new program for waste management, including the informal sector, bringing job opportunities for them, a title in their ID, as well as training and giving them more incentives to be part of that process. Without them, we cannot keep the environment clean, but without them, we will also suffer because of the so many diseases and linkages between health and environment. And keeping them safe and having that social protection for those recyclers would be a good beginning of thinking further on how can we relate to waste, ocean, biodiversity, and climate, and most of all, education. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Minister Fawad. So next I'm going to ask all of the ministers that have joined us for the live discussion to put on their cameras. And that is, so we've got Baroness Baron with us, Mr. Mamo, Baru Mamo, Agnes and Nyalonji, and Anindito Aditemo. So please do put your cameras on. So great, thank you so much. And it was great to hear from the minister, specifically as we're heading towards, I guess, the next COP when we just come out of COP, and the discussions that have been arised from that. But my first question is going to be posed to Mr. Anindito Aditemo from Indonesia. Indonesia has demonstrated a focus on developing a new curricula to transform schools. And we know that Minister Makim has emphasized this crucial role of sustainability in transforming the country's education system. But what does it look like in practice? What more needs to be done in transforming Indonesia's education system?
Thank you so much for the thoughtful question, Zamzam. It's a pleasure to be part of this forum. I've enjoyed a lot learning and be inspired from the young leaders who are making a difference in their respective fields. With regards to your question, yes, we in Indonesia are embarking on an ambitious attempt to transform our education system. And one of the key elements of this effort is a revamping of our national curriculum, as well as a new national assessment. So as the Indonesian Minister of Education, Mr. Nadiem Makarim, has stated on a number of occasions, we in Indonesia strongly believe that education can and should play an important role in creating a more sustainable future. Climate change is a human-made problem. The amount of greenhouse gases in our atmosphere is a direct consequence of our day-to-day decisions regarding what we eat, the clothes we wear, how we travel, and what we consume in general. In other words, tackling climate change requires changing our collective values and behaviors. And this is obviously something that education can help with. Education can help shape the values and behaviors of future generations to ensure that they not only understand climate change as a technical problem, but also have a strong enough sense of social responsibility and collective agency to take action. And to this end, the new Indonesian curriculum dedicates a significant portion, around 20 to 30% of the curricular time, for interactive and collaborative activities. These are activities which are centered around projects and issues that are practical and meaningful for students, the kinds of activities that are essential to give students the opportunity to develop not only competencies such as complex reasoning and collaborative skills, but also values such as social responsibility and environmental awareness. And to ensure that those activities actually foster environmental awareness, the ministry has stipulated sustainable living as one of the mandatory themes. So activities such as those described by Hian Lang and Gracia from the Scouts movement could be an integral part of the school curriculum in Indonesia. We also embed environmental themes in many of the traditional subjects. In language, for example, many of the readings and discussion topics are related to sustainable lifestyle. And one more point, we also assess students' environmental values as part of the key learning outcomes measured in our new national assessment. So improvements of students' environmental values from year to year is among the criteria by which schools and districts will be held accountable. Hopefully this will nudge teachers and principals to prioritize the development of students' values and attitudes as important learning outcomes. So I hope that gives a bit of a sense of how we are embedding environmental values in our curriculum and assessment.
Absolutely does, and it's actually really exciting to hear that there's a cohesive approach being taken, and it's not a individual or a siloed approach, which actually leads me perfectly onto the next question that I want to pose to Her Excellency Agnes Nyalonji. Seeing that you've placed emphasis on climate-proofing schools and ensuring that African youth have access to education, what do you think governments can do differently to allow young people to be seen as the collaborators of change instead of recipients of policies, especially seeing that young people want to be more engaged in government decision-making processes?
Thank you very much, Zamzam, and greetings to all participants. My name is Agnes Nyalonji, as you've heard, and I will share 6 things very quickly that governments can do and which we in Malawi are doing or planning to do. But before I start that, allow me to share the fact that last month, Malawi was hit by one of the worst cyclones, tropical cyclones, which has left the education sector reeling from yet another disaster, which starts from thousands of kilometers away. Midnight is when the waters came in many houses, many schools. As I sit here now, I've just traveled 800 kilometers today from the area that's been worst affected. As we sit, over 400 schools have been destroyed completely. About 400,000 learners are destitute and teachers are desperate, all their property destroyed. So for us, the points I'm going to share are about how to integrate climate change and environment in education. But as Minister of Education, as I sit here now, my challenge is how do I protect education from climate disasters such as this, which are coming hard on the heels of COVID, are coming hard on the heels of Cyclone Idai, which we're still trying to recover from. That as it may, here are the 6 points that I want to make. Number 1, education, especially quality education in itself, is a very powerful tool for climate change and nature preservation. Education is crucial in enabling youth to participate actively in promoting climate action. Quality education enables youth to understand and address impacts of climate change, such as we're facing here just now, because it empowers them with knowledge, skills, and values and attitudes needed to act as agents of change. Investing in girls' education in particular is very important because it is the foundation for women's equal participation in decision-making, in green innovation, livelihoods, and policy making. This is a very big opportunity for us as governments, my government included, to to make sure that whatever we do, girls are in the forefront of everything we do. This is why it's so sad for us, because the destruction of schools means that we don't have a safe place for girls to go and learn. And yesterday I saw some very sad stories. However, girls' education and quality education in general is the route to go. Point number 2 I want to share is that education systems need to pivot around climate and nature preservation. We believe here in Malawi that if you learn at school, if youth learn at school the adverse effects of climate change, they can contribute effectively to mitigating the effects around them. In my country, we have made climate change a cross-cutting issue across the whole curriculum. From primary school all the way to university, our learners are exposed to issues of climate change and environmental degradation and how they can mitigate the effects of that through education at the different levels that they are. We feel that that this is a powerful strategy as we are catching our youth very young, and as they grow, it will be natural for them to be working towards having a better environment around them, better communities, negative impacts of climate change such as we're facing. Point number 3 I want to share is we need to encourage creative thinking, science, and innovation in education so that children become agents of change for local innovations. In Malawi, we have the National School Science Fair, an annual event which gives secondary school students a platform whereby they can showcase their scientific innovations and projects made from locally, usually using local materials. These projects are usually solutions to some of the problems that the students encounter every day. Area number 4 that I want to share is that governments must include youth in policy decisions, in policy making. And the first area I want to share that we've done here in Malawi is last year in January, Malawi adopted its first real long-term development vision, the Malawi 2063. Malawi is predominantly a youthful country, over 3/4 youth. The development of this development vision was done with strong involvement of the youth, and it embeds the environment throughout the whole plan. That's the first example. So everything that we're doing from now to 2063 has the youth written all over it, and it is a youth voice. The second thing in education that we're doing is that this year, 2022-23, we are going to be reviewing our curriculum to make sure that we strengthen it, reflecting the Malawi 2063. And this will be a very consultative process where youth will be major stakeholders to help shape what they want to learn in school, to enable them to be active stakeholders in averting negative impacts of climate change. The fifth area is that governments must invest in targeted youth-focused information, education, and communication for climate action. With a large out-of-school population in Malawi, let me share very briefly that only 15% of our youth are in secondary schools. 85% are not in school that ought to be in school. So with a large population, we're also focusing on the out-of-school youth, where we have various communication strategies and involvement strategies, and using a lot of radio, including community radio in local languages, to reach the youth and encourage them to take leadership. And so we see more and more youth forming clubs and taking action. And that leads me to my final point, is that governments must encourage and support youth-led and youth-initiated climate change initiatives. For example, here in Malawi, there's a CAMFED program that delivers a climate change action and sensitization course module that is entirely run by young women, encouraging youth, especially women, but not just women, to be more active and to be leaders, not just active, but to be leaders. And my ministry and other ministries in government are supporting these young women to make sure that their messages can go as far as possible everywhere in the country. These are the messages that I wanted to share. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency Agnes, for those very inspiring words at the end also, but also for sharing us with some very clear points as to what other governments should be focusing on. And I really would love to ask you so many follow-up questions, but maybe we will at the end. I'm going to move on to the next speaker. So the next speaker is Baroness Barron, the Parliamentary Undersecretary of State and Minister of School in the United Kingdom. And the question I have for Baroness is, the UK has been a front runner when it comes to universities committing to net zero targets, as well as requiring further education teachers to integrate sustainability into their teaching. As the COP26 president, what do we think that the countries need to do more on when it comes to nature sustainability education, and how youth are being included in this process?
Thanks so much, Zamzam. And it's just humbling to listen to all the other speakers. I had the huge pleasure of spending time with Agnes at COP26, and I hope I can book you in, Agnes, at COP27 to see you again. And I'll join in your added Q&A, Zamzam, when you do that. So there's, of course, there's more we can be doing, and there's also a real need to focus. So I'd just like to touch very briefly on both. I think the thing that we should always do more of is, listening, particularly in a country like the UK, which is not facing the same challenges as we've heard from other speakers today in terms of those direct impacts of climate change. So we need to listen to other countries and learn from them. And critically, to echo other speakers, we can't listen too much to young people, and we need to be able to hear back from young people when you think we do it well, and when we need a little help to do it better, with a real focus on giving agency to young people to be part of the solutions. So that's the bit I would start by saying we should do more of. I'm also going to try and make the case for focus. And normally we would use the phrase, you can't hug the world, but I think in climate change, we do exactly want to hug the world. So somebody can think of a better phrase for me, but I think we feel very clear that we want to do some key things really well and try then and build on that success to expand, rather than stretch ourselves too thin and end up not delivering anything well. So the three things that we're really focused on kind of interlock in our strategy. One is around the buildings that we have. So 36% of all public buildings in this country are either universities or schools. And we plan to make sure that they are all, anything new that we build will deliver net zero. And we're also working to reduce the footprint of all of those buildings. We're also really excited about the opportunity to build the knowledge and the skills of young people through our school curriculum, which is expanding, but also through two very focused initiatives. One we're calling the Climate Leaders Award, which I hope describes pretty much what it aims to do, and will be targeted at young people of different ages. And we're also creating a virtual national nature park where each school will be able to map the biodiversity of their school and compare it to other schools. And we hope through that we'll gain lots of really useful skills which are important for the labour market. So we're working really closely. We've got a fantastic youth panel who are advising us very skillfully on those programs. And we engaged with many youth organizations and with Mock COP and others ahead of COP26. But we know we can do better on that, and we really value the feedback from young people about how we can do that. And we commit to being transparent about where we can enact your advice and where genuinely we can't, and we'll explain why. I think I just wanted to close my remarks just on, I hope, a hopeful note, which is the thing I left COP feeling, and all of my conversations with employers since then, has been a sense of incredible opportunity and a huge appetite for the skills and energy and knowledge that young people can bring. So our responsibility as education ministers is to make sure we fill your curriculum and your wider experience with all of those things. But I think, you know, people talk about a third industrial revolution as the green revolution. And really, I believe that's true. And I believe that after 2 terrible years for young people with COVID and the enormous, enormous price you all paid, that there is a much brighter future and that you are key to delivering it.
Thank you so much, Baroness. And it's great to hear from you some of the work that is happening, and also have Karis and Shreya on the call who probably have been a part of a lot of the campaigning and influencing, and then you'll come across, I'm sure. So I want to move on to the next speaker, and hopefully we'll see if we have some time for some questions, because I do have, would love to be able to have an informal chat also. But our next speaker is Mr. Mamo Baru from Kenya. And we know Kenya's been doing some brilliant work around mainstreaming climate change into the curricula at all levels of education, training, and has been leading on development and implementation of the National Education for Sustainable Development Policy. What more would you think needs to be done to ensure that coming generations are equipped to deal with the climate challenges in the future? And what role should universities play in reinforcing green skills among young people? Mr. Mamo?
Thank you, Zamzam. Pleasure to be on this panel. I think what we need to do more is more education, and also simplifying the science of climate change, because education is an essential tool for achieving sustainability. I think the coming generation needs to acquire more knowledge, more skills, attitude, and values to shape a sustainable future. In Kenya, I think we've undertaken a number of initiatives. One, as you've said, we've integrated climate change education into all curricula, right from the primary school, tertiary institutions, and to the university. In Kenya, we've also worked on establishing what we call ESD schools, Education for Sustainable Development model schools, where best environmental practices are modeled for replication in other parts of the country. We also engage learners in extracurricular activities, such as establishment of environmental clubs, what we call the eco clubs, young farmers clubs, scouts, hiking, photography, advocacy, debates, so that we promote attitude and behavior change towards environmental conservation. We are also engaged in mobilization of the youth so that they take climate action at all levels. It's important that the youths walk the talk to ensure that through initiatives, activities like tree planting, tree growing, cleanup activities, nature walks, and other conservation initiatives, they'll be able to fully participate in conservation and enhancement of our environment. We are also working towards development of climate change skills that promote circular and green economy. As a country, we are transiting from what we call the linear model of waste management to circular model, where we look at extracting value from waste and ensuring that youths are really involved in green initiatives, starting recycling initiatives and all that. What role should universities play in reinforcing green skills among young people? One, I think that we need to create and strengthen linkages between academia and industry to address appropriate interventions where youth can get internship in those green industries, green jobs in model green initiatives. We can also look at the issue of reorienting our curricula in training to include learning outcomes that really actualize green jobs, what we call green graduates or green youths. We are also conducting a number of training programs on climate finance so that youths will be able to access global climate funds like GCF and GEF. We also create platform where youths can dialogue and have forum to discuss climate change issues at their level. We are also looking at research that is aimed at finding solutions to existing climate change challenges, basically nature-based solutions, and also looking at documenting what we have or what we call the indigenous knowledge to provide those nature-based solutions to address climate change issues. And I think it's important for us to bring all youth on board and ensure that we address holistically the issues of environmental conservation, because this is basically our environment, our life, and our responsibility, collective and individual responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mamo, for those words and having a little insight into the work that is happening in Kenya. And I wholeheartedly agree with the role universities should be playing. I know we're running out of time actually for this session. In the way in which it was set up, we were going to a very, very tight schedule, so I'm not able to have a Q&A, but I would invite you all, hopefully for us to be able to set up a session in future with the ministers to actually kind of delve into some of those different things, because I do think there's an interesting dynamic between the role that that different countries play and the work that's happening, and that cross collaboration, the collaborative work is very exciting and innovative, and it's something that I would like to really delve into. But again, I want to thank all of the ministers that have attended and have really spent the time with us. I really appreciate the knowledge you shared, and I hope those that have joined us today have learned something. And this is also recorded, so you'll be able to rewatch it. And I'm sure we can discuss and continue these conversations in future. But next, I'm gonna move on to the next part of the event, which is an introduction, which is an exciting part, a very exciting part for those of us that have probably been watching Netflix and know about the movie Don't Look Up. So to deliver our closing remarks, I'd like to introduce Academy Award-winning writer, director, producer, Adam McKay, who made his name in the comedy world when he served as a head writer for SNL, and later wrote and directed numerous iconic comedies such as Anchorman, The Legend of Ron Burgundy, Talladega Nights, The Ballad of Rocky Bobby. And so he's going to share with us some incredibly powerful words, and we'll wrap up after that. So I'll pass on to Adam.
Hi, I'm Adam McKay. I'm a writer, director. I've done a bunch of movies from Anchorman to Talladega Nights to The Big Short, all the way to our recent movie, Don't Look Up. I'm originally from around Philadelphia and have also lived in New York City and Los Angeles. And I think throughout all my experiences, whether it's making movies or wherever I lived and grew up, I've always loved nature. Some of my fondest memories as a kid were riding my bike in the 4th grade with all my friends through nature preserves and building forts in the woods behind our house. Streams, fishing in lakes, and time on the beach. it's funny to even say it out loud because it's so much a part of me. But it's also the reason lately I've been a little troubled, well, actually a lot troubled by what's going on with the climate. There's been bigger storms, there's been more fires, there's been crazy rain going on around the planet. And Don't Look Up is an unusual movie. It's a comedy, but also kind of a drama tragedy. And it's about our world ignoring a big central truth, which in the case of Don't Look Up is a comet's going to hit Earth. And what you see is our political leaders, our media, our celebrities, our social media, all make this very simple central truth incredibly complicated. So the movie's funny and we should keep our sense of humor, but the movie also, in the way we tried to make it, hopefully it affected you this way, also makes you ask the question, what can I do to help? So big reason I'm talking to you today is that each and every one of you is a part of this. And it doesn't mean that you can solve it on your own. It means that your own individual and collective actions can change the world. And this relates to asking questions at school, in science class. Why aren't we talking about climate change, CO2? It relates to asking why your school doesn't have solar panels on it. If your family's in a position where they can make a choice to have an electric car, why aren't you? What are different ways that you can reduce your production of CO2? But the biggest thing you can do, much bigger than your individual choices, are your collective choices. And that involves asking your parents, why aren't they voting for a candidate who realizes what a threat climate change and the climate crisis is to our way of life? It has to do with talking about it with the people around you, because a lot of times it never even comes up. And through all of this action, collective action, voting, talking, protesting, holding up signs, writing petitions, just stopping the gears that are creating this climate crisis from continuing and calling out the lies wherever you have a chance, literally and without exaggeration, you're going to be a part of the biggest movement in human history, which is to save planetary life as we know it. That's both cool, that's both awesome, it's a little bit scary, but we can handle it. And we're going to do it with a lot of determination and a lot of humor and a lot of courage. So thank you so much for checking this out. Thank you to everyone out there who's working hard, to all the climate activists, journalists, the voices that won't be silenced, because we know this is about our future and this is about the beauty of nature and this gift that we've all been given, that we have to work hard and fight to protect. So as you're hanging out with your friends this weekend, or as you're going out with your family to the beach, take a big, deep breath and look at the beauty around you. And remember, it's not given to us without some work required on our end. Hi, I'm...
Thank you so much, Adam. And yeah, that was an incredible movie that I recommend people watching, in the sense of how making us deal with some uncomfortable truths in the role that we play through individual action. I'm going to hand over to Sam Barrett, the Chief of Youth Education Advocacy at UNEA, for some wrap up, and then we will be soon closing the event. So Sam.
Thank you, Zamzam. And thank you everyone for listening. I think this has been a magical event with lots of great ideas. And And to all the ministers from Indonesia, from Malawi, from Kenya, from the UK, it's just been great to have you with us as well. So I think we've learned a lot. I think I've got 4 quick things I'm going to say. Number 1, education is a critical cog, and we need to work it harder to see how we can change the hearts and minds of young people, how they learn differently, and with education and climate at the heart of the curriculum. And we've heard lots of great ideas about what we need to do differently there. Number 2, it feels like skills is coming through as a critical outcome of the education system. The Kenyan government are doing more of it. Really good to hear Baroness Barron about the UK doing more of this. So how we make that transition is critical. Number 3, it's brilliant to see all these new actors working on this. So whether it's gaming, whether it's scouts and sport, these new entities that can take the message out of the lecture hall, out of the classroom, and reach those that may not be listening in the way that perhaps we would like them to, but to take that message to them really matters. So it's great to hear from all of you on those ideas. And finally, I think the most important thing for me is how we listen with humility to young people. It is their future that they have coming up for them, and how the education system and non-formal education partners can support them is fundamental. So I think there's a lot here for UNEP to do, and we're going to be putting a lot of time, effort and energy into this. And with the great support of Times Higher Ed, thank you for hosting this, and Karina and Noemi, who put so much time into organising this event. Thank you for all you've brought to this discussion, and let's get busy. Let's see what we can do. And this is going to be the first of many of these kind of webinars. So looking forward to having you more of them as we go forward. So thank you, Zamzam. Back to you for wrapping up. And I've loved this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So first of all, thank you to all of our speakers that have joined us today, the ministers that have joined us. And I think, and I'm hoping you can all take away a lot from what was shared. I know I will be taking a lot away from the discussions that were had. And I think one of the most important things is done for me anyways, as somebody that has been a climate activist and involved in education over the years, is that education is a fundamental part to everything that we do and everything around us. And hearing about some of the innovative and exciting things that are happening in different pockets of the world, by different organization campaigns. I hope it's excited you to get involved. There's been call to actions from the people that we've invited here, and for you to join the work that they're doing if you have an interest in those different perspectives. And so my last call to action is for you to do something, and showing and always reminding ourselves that and not taking action is making a decision, and therefore to be able to avert the climate disaster, we all play a part in that work. So thank you again for joining us. All the links and all the information will be shared via social media, has been shared in the chat function. So make sure you do log down, write that down. And hopefully, like Sam said, we'll be doing many more of these, and hopefully you'll see and able to discuss more of these. And also if there's anything specific that you want to discuss further or hear more about, do let us know, and we will get back to you. So have a lovely day, regardless of where in the world you are. Take care.